Every spring, you hear them starting up across the neighborhood. The rototillers. It is the sound of the season right along with the returning birds. You drag that heavy machine out of the shed, check the oil, yank the starter cord, and spend the next weekend wrestling it through the dirt. You churn up that patch of grass or weeds until it looks like a clean slate. It feels like honest work. It feels like you are doing something good. It smells like fresh earth and gasoline. And for about a week, it looks perfect, smooth, dark, and ready for planting. But I want you to think about what happens 3 weeks later. The weeds explode. It is not just a few dandelions. It is a carpet of green that seems to grow faster than your vegetables ever could. And then by July, that fluffy soil you worked so hard to create turns into a hard pan crust that cracks in the sun. Water just runs right off it. So you drag the tiller out again, or you grab a hoe and start chopping. You are caught in a cycle of disturbance. You till, you plant, you weed, you water, and the soil seems to fight you every step of the way. If you feel like gardening is a battle, it is because you have been given a battle plan instead of a growing plan. Most of us were taught that soil needs to be loosened by force. We were told that plants need fluffy dirt that we create with steel tines. But I want you to look at the edge of your property. Look at the woods line or an old fence row where nobody ever mows or tills. Walk over there and push your hand into the ground under the leaves. It is usually soft. It is usually damp, even when your garden is bone dry. There are no machines working out there. Yet the trees are 80 ft tall and the undergrowth is thick. Nature has been growing things for millions of years without a rototiller, and she doesn't struggle with hard pan clay. The reason is simple. Nature builds soil from the top down. Leaves fall, grass dies back, branches drop. It all lands on the surface and decomposes. The worms and the microbes come up to eat it and pull that organic matter down. They do the tilling for you. They create billions of tiny tunnels that let air and water move through the ground. When we take a tiller to that, we aren't helping. We are destroying the house those workers live in. We are shredding the fungal structure that holds water. We are bringing thousands of dormant weed seeds up to the light, waking them up and giving them a fresh bed to grow in. That is why the weeds always win in a tilled garden. I want you to stop fighting the soil. I want you to put the tiller away for good. We are going to stop treating the garden like a construction site and start treating it like a forest floor. We are going to build permanent beds that mimic that natural layering. We aren't going to dig down, we are going to build up. This isn't about ignoring the work. It's about front-loading the effort so you never have to break your back turning dirt again. It starts with changing how you see the ground under your boots. We need to stop thinking about working the land and start thinking about feeding the system. When I talk about building a garden, most people immediately think of a shopping list. They picture stacks of lumber, expensive cedar planks, galvanized steel corners, or bags of screws. They think raised bed means a box you have to construct. I want to clear that up right now. A permanent bed is not a box. It is not a product you buy at the hardware store. It is a decision you make about how you treat the ground. You can build these beds with absolutely no sides at all, just mounded earth, and they will work just as well as the ones in the magazines. The magic isn't in the lumber, it is in the permanence. We need to talk about why soil gets hard in the first place. Why do you feel the need to till every spring? It is because the soil is compacted. It is tight and dense. And the main reason it gets that way is simple. You walk on it. Every time you step into a traditional row garden to weed or harvest, you are pressing all the air out of the soil. You are collapsing those tiny tunnels the worms built. You are turning a sponge into a brick. A human being is a heavy thing, and when you put all that weight on a few square inches of heel, you are doing more damage than a season of drought. The permanent bed system solves this by establishing a fundamental law for your garden. There are places for boots and there are places for roots, and they never overlap. We are going to map out specific strips of ground that will be the growing zones. These will never under any circumstances see a footprint again. Then we map out the paths between them. Those paths are for you, for your wheelbarrow, and for your tools. You can stomp on the paths all you want. In fact, compacting the paths is good. It keeps weeds down, but the beds remain sacred ground. Once you make this separation, something incredible happens. Since you aren't walking on the growing soil, it never gets compacted. Since it never gets compacted, you never have to till it to fluff it up. It stays soft. You can stick your hand into a permanent bed that has been established for 5 years, and it will be loose and crumbly all the way down to your elbow. This isn't because you worked it. It is because you left it alone. You let the frost heave it in the winter, and the roots open it in the summer, and you didn't undo their work by stepping on it. This requires a mental shift before we move a single shovel full of dirt. You have to stop looking at your garden as one big square of potential planting space. You have to start seeing it as a permanent landscape, almost like the layout of a house. You have your hallways and you have your rooms. You don't sleep in the hallway and you don't walk through the walls. When you commit to this geography, you solve the structure problem forever. You are building a habitat that gets better every single year because the architecture of the soil is allowed to mature without interruption. Now we are going to lay the foundation. The first mistake people make isn't about soil, it's about location. You want these beds as close to your kitchen door as you can get them. If you have to walk 100 yards to pick a lettuce leaf, you aren't going to do it. You want to see your garden while you are drinking your morning coffee. The closer it is, the better you will tend it. Pick a spot that gets good sun at least 6 hours a day and mark out your corners. Keep it simple. 30 and wide is a good standard for a bed because you can step over it easily. 4FT is okay if you have long arms, but don't go wider than that. You never want to have to lean so far in that you lose your balance and put a foot down in the growing zone. Once you have your spot marked, do not go get a shovel. Do not rent a sod cutter. Leaving that grass right where it is actually part of the plan. We are going to use a technique called sheet mulching or smothering. You need cardboard, lots of it. Go to the appliance store, the bike shop, or the recycling center. You want the plain brown stuff, not the shiny glossy boxes with colorful ink. Remove all the packing tape and the plastic labels. Tape doesn't decompose and you will be pulling it out of your carrots 5 years from now if you leave it on. Take that cardboard and lay it directly over the grass or weeds. If the grass is tall, stomp it down flat first. You are creating a blackout curtain. Plants need light to survive. If you cut off the light, they die. It is that simple. But you have to be thorough. When you lay one piece of cardboard down, overlap the next piece by at least 6 in. If you leave even a tiny gap, the grass will find it. It will snake its way up through that crack like it is searching for air. Overlap generously. After the cardboard is down, soak it with a hose. You want it wet and heavy so it molds to the contour of the ground and doesn't blow away in the wind. This wet cardboard layer is doing 2 things. First, it is killing the competition without you lifting a finger. The grass underneath will die, rot, and turn into nitrogen for your worms. Second, it is a temporary barrier. By the time your crop roots need to go deep, that cardboard will be soft enough for them to punch through. But for right now, it is the floor of your new system. You have just cleared the land without turning a single clod of soil. Now we have our wet cardboard floor, and it is time to build the house. We are going to mimic about 50 years of forest floor accumulation in a single afternoon. This is where the magic of the sponge happens. On top of that cardboard, you need bulk organic matter. This isn't soil yet. It's the raw fuel for your soil. I use whatever is cheap or free in my area. Maybe it is old spoiled hay from a local farm that they can't feed to animals. Maybe it is a mountain of shredded autumn leaves you saved. Maybe it is clean straw. You are going to pile this high, about 8 to 10 in deep, right on top of the cardboard. It feels like too much. It feels ridiculous. But this is the reservoir that will hold water in July. On top of that fluffy bulk layer, we add the actual growing medium. This is your finished compost. You want a solid 4 to 6 inches of the good stuff. If you have your own pile, use it. If not, this is the one place where spending money makes sense. Buy a bulk load from a landscape yard, not the little bags from the big box store. The bags are too expensive and you never have enough. You want to cover that hay or leaves completely so you can't see them anymore. When you stand back, it looks like a tall, dark mound of earth. It might be 12 or 14 in high at this point. Do not step on it. Remember, this is a no-fly zone for feet. I want you to visualize what happens to this bed over the next season because this is where the system proves itself. It is not static, it is moving. In week 1, you plant your seeds or transplants right into that top layer of compost. The bed is high and fluffy. By week 4, gravity and rain have started to settle it. That bottom layer of hay is compressing, beginning to break down, and turning into a slow-release compost pile right under your plants. By month 2, your plants, let's say tomatoes or peppers, are pushing their roots down. They breeze through the soft compost. Then they hit that decaying hay layer. This is crucial. That hay layer is like a giant sponge. It holds moisture 10 times longer than dirt does. When the summer heat hits in July or August, and your neighbors are out there with hoses every single evening trying to keep their wilting plants alive, you will check your soil and find it is still damp. You might only need to water once a week. The roots are drinking from the reservoir you built back in the spring. As the season ends and we get into month 6, the bed will have shrunk down to maybe 8 in high. That is a good sign. It means the biology is working. The worms have been coming up from the deep earth, eating that cardboard, which is mush by now, and pulling the organic matter down. They are mixing the layers for you. You haven't turned a spade of earth, but the soil structure is better than it was when you started. You have created a living system that regulates its own moisture and fertility. But we aren't done. You never leave the soil naked. In nature, bare soil is a wound, and the earth fixes wounds with scabs, which we call weeds. To stop that, you cover the exposed compost with a final protective blanket. I like to use wood chips, not the dyed red kind, but natural arborist chips in the walkways, and a light layer of straw or chopped leaves around the plants themselves. This skin keeps the sun from baking the life out of the bacteria and keeps the wind from drying it out. You have built a complete ecosystem, a nutrient layer, a moisture-holding sponge layer, and a protective roof. Now that your beds are built, the heavy lifting is effectively over. The maintenance of this system doesn't look like labor. It looks like feeding. In a traditional garden, you are constantly depleting the bank account of the soil and then trying to deposit a lump sum of chemical fertilizer in the spring to make up for it. In a permanent bed, we make small deposits every single time a crop comes out. We call this the top-off method. Nature doesn't dig a hole to bury a falling leaf. She drops it on the surface, and the rain and biology wash the nutrients down to the roots. We do the same thing every year. Your beds will shrink a little as the plants consume the organic matter. When you harvest a crop, you don't need to get the tiller out. You simply add an inch or 2 of fresh compost right on top of the bed. That's it. You are feeding the soil from above, just like the forest does. The worms will come up to get it, and the rain will carry the nutrients down. You never disturb the structure you've built. You just add to the savings account. There is one specific habit I want you to break, and that is pulling plants up by the roots. When your corn is done, or your broccoli has gone to seed, the instinct is to yank the whole thing out, shaking the dirt off the root ball. Don't do it. That root system has drilled thousands of pathways through the soil. If you pull it out, you collapse those tunnels. Instead, take a sharp knife or pair of shears and cut the plant off right at the soil line. Leave the roots in the ground. They will decompose in place, feeding the microbes and leaving perfect channels for air and water to move through. You are using the old crop to till the ground for the new one. This brings us to the most rewarding part of the system, the transition between seasons. In a traditional tillage garden, spring is a time of anxiety. You are waiting for the mud season to end. The ground is too wet to till, but you need to plant your peas and onions. You wait, and you miss your window. With permanent beds, that problem disappears because the beds are raised and full of organic matter. They drain incredibly well because you never walk on them. They are never muddy. You can walk out to your garden in early March while your neighbor's plot is still a soup of cold mud, and you can plant. You just rake back the mulch, poke a seed into the soil, and cover it back up. The season starts when you say it starts, not when the rototiller can handle the mud. This reliability changes how you plan your year. You aren't fighting the weather anymore. You are working with a system that is resilient enough to handle it. When winter comes, we don't just walk away. We put the beds to sleep properly. A bare bed in winter is a damaged bed in spring. The rain will leach out the nutrients and compact the surface. So in late autumn, after the final cleanup, we give the beds a thick blanket. This could be a sowing of a cover crop or just a heavy layer of leaves or straw. This insulation keeps the soil biology alive and awake much longer into the cold season. While the ground outside the garden is frozen solid, the soil under that mulch is often still unfrozen, teeming with life, breaking down nutrients and preparing for the spring thaw. You rest and the garden works for you. I want you to fast forward in your mind. I want you to look past this coming season and imagine your garden 3 or 4 years from now. This is where the permanent bed system really separates itself from the way you were likely taught to farm. In a tilled garden, every year is year one. You reset the clock, you reset the biology, and you reset the weeds every single spring. But in a permanent system, time is your partner. You are building equity in the soil. The first year, your beds will be good. The second year, they will be better. But by year 5, they are a completely different animal. You will notice that you barely have to water. The organic matter has built up so much that the soil acts like a dark, rich sponge, holding on to rain for weeks at a time. While the lawns on your street are turning brown in August, your tomatoes will be standing tall and green, tapping into moisture reserves that are safe deep underground. You stop worrying about every dry spell. You stop dragging hoses around every evening. The system has stabilized, and it takes care of itself. You will also notice something strange happening with the weeds. They stop showing up. This sounds impossible, but it is just biology. The soil is full of weed seeds, millions of them, waiting for a flash of sunlight to wake them up. When you till, you bring a fresh batch of those seeds to the surface every year. You are planting the weeds yourself. In a permanent bed, we exhaust the weed seed bank. You deal with the surface weeds in the first year or two. And because you never dig down to bring up new ones, the reservoir runs dry. Weeding goes from being a weekend-long battle to a 5-minute morning stroll with a cup of coffee. You pick a tiny dandelion here, a stray grass blade there, and you are done. This brings a sense of peace that is hard to explain until you feel it. You aren't manic anymore. You aren't rushing to beat the weather. You know that the garden is there, steady and ready, producing food for your table with a reliability that the grocery store can't match. It isn't about growing 10,000 lobes of food or becoming a commercial farmer. It is about the quiet confidence of knowing you can walk out your back door and find dinner regardless of what is happening in the world or the economy. It is about being a producer, not just a consumer. So here's my advice to you right now. Do not go out and tear up your entire backyard. Do not rent a machine and try to build 20 beds this weekend. That is how people burn out. That is how gardening becomes a chore instead of a joy. I want you to start with one bed, just one. Mark out a small space, maybe 4 ft by 8 ft. Lay down your cardboard. Pile on your organic matter. Plant one crop that you actually like to eat. Maybe it is a row of potatoes or a patch of garlic or some snap peas. Focus on that one small ecosystem. Watch how the soil changes. Watch how the worms move in. Prove the system to yourself on a scale that costs you almost no money and very little time. Once you see that one bed thriving while the rest of the yard struggles, you won't need me to convince you to build the second one. You will do it because it makes sense. You will do it because you have stopped fighting nature and started letting her do the heavy lifting for you. That is when you stop just gardening and you start growing. If this journey into the heart of the soil has changed the way you look at the ground beneath your feet, please subscribe and like the channel. We are uncovering the ancient wisdom of the earth that modern machines have tried to bury. Let's cultivate a future that works with nature, not against it. The next secret of the garden will be shared soon.